I love like the cameo role from another filmmaker that we see.
Drive-by movies you're watching.
Fresh releases.
My name's Blaze.
And my name is James.
And this week we're talking Steven Spielberg's latest, The Fabelmans.
What was your favorite part?
Growing up in post-World War II era Arizona, young Sammy Fabelman aspires to become a filmmaker as he reaches adolescence, but soon discovers a shattering family secret and explores how the power of films can help him see the truth. So it's been a while since I've seen anything from Steven Spielberg, I believe. I mean, of course, he's one of the greatest directors of all time, has so many classic hits, and has keep coming out with movies that get great reviews, but I can't recall the last movie I saw by him. Like, honestly, and this is a nice, like, return to just, like, you know, hearing his, like, adolescent story on, like, what it was like becoming the most famous filmmaker of all time. Blaze, what are your initial thoughts on it?
I think the last movie I remember correctly, at least I witnessed you see of Steven Spielberg's, was Ready Player One, but that was a long time ago, I feel like.
I think so, too, for me, yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, at least that was mine in theaters, and you know, I think recently I haven't seen many of his movies, honestly. So yeah, this was, you know, a return for me to Steven Spielberg. I thought that this film was honestly excellent. It was definitely one of those movies where it's cool to see where this guy came from. I don't know if I would ever revisit this film, honestly, but I think it's great to have in his filmography. Like, it's cool to have, you know, that autobiographical story, even though, you know, it's not quite frankly said it's Steven Spielberg. They probably took some creative liberties here and there with the story to make it a little bit more compelling and a better adaptation, I guess. But just this version of the film, it's pretty interesting. I really enjoyed it, and it was interesting to see how, like, I guess what brought him to become like one of the greatest, at least commercial filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I really appreciated was just the nostalgia of this film, with just kind of not really having an overall center story plot. Like, yeah, of course there's a beginning, middle, and end within this movie, but it's been a while since I've seen a movie where it just involves a family and just like it's just a series of events. Like, we kind of talked about it with the Christmas Story Christmas that came out, and how just like the original, there's not really a plot line within the movie. Of course, there's the A plot of trying to get the Red Ryder BB gun, but then there's the B and C plots of just like random things kind of going on. It's an unconventional film. And another movie it reminded me of was Avalon, which is a movie that my family would always put on every Thanksgiving. Not that it was like necessarily a Thanksgiving movie, it just had a Thanksgiving sequence. And if you're unfamiliar with that movie, it's like Elijah Wood's like first movie. It's just about like a family drama moving to Baltimore and stuff. And this movie just had that warm feeling of just like what it's like growing up as a kid. And, you know, like me, like traveling throughout the California and stuff. I was never in one city in California for, you know, longer than a decade or so. So like that was like pretty relatable and stuff. And I'm sure it's relatable for a lot of people. Also, anyone who's just like wanting to become a filmmaker, just seeing the person who might have helped get them into film and just seeing that backstory is just really like peaceful feeling. This is like ASMR for my eyes almost.
It's interesting because I do feel like the film had a lot of chaotic elements to it. Specifically speaking about Michelle Williams' character who's playing as Sammy Fabelman's mother. Her character, it's definitely like flawed throughout the film, and it's, you know, what really takes Sammy upon the arc that he travels. So it feel like that's going to be the reason why it would be hard for me to revisit this movie, I guess. I think it's definitely one of those movies though where at first, like maybe watching it, it's really hard to kind of see different perspectives of the characters inside the film. But like as time passes, you kind of realize that, you know, sometimes you can't really control like what the heart wants, I guess, even if, you know, you're throwing everyone else under the bridge, essentially. Right. So yeah, this film, it was definitely like one where there was a lot of like hard sequences. At least I felt like just all the family stuff where their family's like breaking up is just really kind of sad, and that's probably why I won't revisit it. But I felt like everyone was really on their A game here. I felt like it made it an enjoyable watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I also appreciated was just the overall, like, you know, chemistry between each character. They really feel like a overall, like, very realistic family. And of course, like Steven Spielberg always brings down, we see that with the young Steven Spielberg trying to get that with his war film and stuff, when he's really pushing these people, like, not just a movie, I'm trying to, you know, bring out emotion for the audience and stuff. And yeah, it really shows. And one thing also that like really caught me off guard, like, because I kind of went into this movie blind. I knew what it was about, but I had tried to avoid trailers just because I knew it was going to be a movie I was going to check out eventually. But I was like waiting for it to kind of go like with like, not necessarily like cliche route, but like I was expecting like, you know, Paul Dano to be an abusive father or something. And I really liked that overall he was encouraging and, you know, just never saw filmmaking as a career for his son. But like overall, he was a very supportive father. And it seemed like the family, like, you know, all got along. Of course, there's, you know, the differences and the like heartache and problems that all families go through. But like, you know, just seeing like, you know, what kind of made him become the person that he was today and stuff, and seeing like the love that he had from both his father and mother, two different kinds of love. But like, you know, I was glad that it wasn't like a story where like my father said I would never make it and I wanted to be like, I wanted to make sure I made it and rub it all over his face, or, you know, vice versa with his mother and stuff. Like, I'm glad it wasn't that story. It was just like, my mom supported me, told me to get into film. My dad enjoyed it, just never saw it as a career for me. And it all comes together very nicely at an end with a bow tie. Like, I don't want to, like, you know, spoil too much, but I love like the cameo role from another filmmaker that we see in the character he plays. That really caught me off guard and made me really happy too, as a Twin Peaks fan, I guess, without saying or spoiling too much.
Oh man, you're telling everyone that Kyle MacLachlan's in the movie. Anyways, yeah, definitely that cameo and just the whole ending is just it's awesome. I had to look it up afterwards. Like, was this true? Did Steven Spielberg actually meet John Ford? Mm-hmm. And I guess supposedly it's true. I thought that was really cool. There's a lot of little nods in that, and it's fun. One of the things though that I did want to talk about actually was Terry Gross's Fresh Air. It's like an NPR show. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's like a pop culture kind of show. They usually have people on, like they'll have like Noah Baumbach on or something for his latest movie. Everyone usually does a circuit and does this show. But anyways, Steven Spielberg was going on to be interviewed on this show, and he actually doesn't do a lot of interviews or like public facing things, but even for most of all his movies, he doesn't do press junkets. Obviously, I think if you've directed the filmography that Steven Spielberg has, you can probably waive, you know, doing press junkets and press days, which he does. But anyways, he did a special interview finally for this. Is like really I don't think I've ever heard like a Steven Spielberg interview, to be honest. You know, I've seen like him and featured in books and stuff like that, but never like an actual interview, especially on a podcast or a public radio. But anyways, yeah, he was interviewed for this show, and it was like so strange and awkward. I'm like, I don't think he's ever gonna do another, because he's pretty old. I don't think he's ever gonna do another interview after this one because of how awkward the interview is. I definitely recommend any of our listeners going to check it out, because it's worth the watch. But just to get into it a little bit, the host, Terry Gross, kind of like digs into him multiple times throughout the interview. It's like an hour-long interview about like his relationship with his father, specifically, I guess, beyond what it's portrayed specifically in this movie. It's more about like, I guess he didn't really talk to his father beyond what we see in the movie, like for a series of years, maybe even decades. And their relationship wasn't like super deep. Like maybe he would invite him to like stuff, or he was in a part of his life, but they never really like, I don't know, talked about like the past and talked about the events that were featured in this movie. And yeah, their relationship just wasn't, I guess, as, you know, deep as it was with his mother. He always did blame his father for what happened to their family, essentially. And she like wouldn't let up, and I felt bad for the guy. Like she would just constantly in the interview ask it like about it, bring it up every second. I was like, oh man, this is so awkward.
Yeah,
it's definitely worth the watch that interview, because the last question she also asks is if he's aware of any of the porn parodies of his films.
oh my god. You have Steven Spielberg and he asked that question.
That's the closer too. That was the closing question.
Yeah,
he was.
I do want to check out his answer. He was not aware.
He was not aware of Schindler's Fist. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm sure there's some other ones and everything, but in Diana Jones, I remember it was like another. But yeah, that sounds like an interesting thing, because I don't think the only interviews I've really seen with Steven Spielberg are just like usually for like not necessarily the commentary, but just like the special features of his movies. I remember I have Jaws, and I remember he does some interviews for that, and that was like the 30th or anniversary, I think it was for. And then I'm sure he did. I remember he did interviews for like War of the Worlds, but yeah, a lot of his newer movies and stuff. And it made me want to check out some of his newer stuff, because I know it all gets good reviews for the most part. Like I know some of his movies weren't held up in as high regard. I remember Ready Player One, I was not really too crazy on, but I really did want to see the West Side Story, just because I know that like everyone kept typing that one up and saying like Steven Spielberg's back. Only he could have made this movie as good as it was, and curious to watch it now. And yeah, like this movie was really fun watching. It's a movie that I'm just gonna like recommend to anyone, especially if you grew up with Steven Spielberg movies, because overall it's just like a fun watch. It's nothing necessarily groundbreaking, but we all know who he is, and it's nice to see the story of the man, the myth, the legend. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think if you've ever enjoyed movies, this movie is worth watching.
Yeah. Yeah, so let us know what you thought about the movie. You can check it out. Well, it's not available stream anywhere, but you can rent it. You can rent it through our Amazon affiliate link in our description box below. It's a great way to help support the show, and do that and come back here letting us know what you thought about it in the comments.
If you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all latest updates.
And if you can't get enough of us here on YouTube, be sure to catch all our social media links down below for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and our own personal letterbox accounts. That'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new video.